Hey, it's Dead Palette, and I'm going to be reading a story called My Savior by Parsacor, a regular commenter on my channel. They have sent me the story to be critiqued constructively, and I'm going to be looking into the story and reading it and interjecting criticism wherever I feel necessary. If this is being heard by someone not named Parsacor, it is because they gave me permission to make this video public. So this is me asking you if you would like to have this video be public. Just comment in this unlisted video. Again, the name of the story is My Savior, and it is written with a female narrator in mind. It's a female narrator, but I'm going to be reading it as is, and hopefully imparting a little bit of realism as I do this. When I read these kinds of stories, I really like to give them the benefit of the doubt and their best experience, even if I don't like them. I like to try and read them seriously. So, getting right into it, My Savior. Grad night, 2009. The after party. Our caps and gowns were thrown into the back seats of our cars, replaced with Daisy Dukes and tank tops. Wasn't long before we drowned out all the formalities with hard liquor. There were no lights there, except for the bonfire raging in the woods. Harry was blasting some god-awful music from his car, not that anyone cared. Too busy dancing, too busy drinking. Air was hazy from all the smoke blowing off from from buds that flickered like lightning bugs in the night. This smoke mixed with that smoke. The smell was enough to burn. So we're getting a lot of character right off the bat. We're getting a lot of place. We're getting a time. We're getting interesting details. We're getting interesting words, even when they're mundane words like Daisy Dukes and tank tops and hard liquor and bonfire. You're writing a short story, and so it's important that you use captivating words, and these are captivating words. It is slightly poetic, but it's poetic in a way that you would expect a person reciting a story to be. It is well within the realm of possibility that someone would actually speak this way. There's a certain countryness to it that is authentic and it's very flavorful and it feels authentic again. It's a little bit short. It almost sounds like Harry's wearing Daisy Dukes and tank tops, so you might want to explain the difference between his car and how our narrator got there and everything. Separating that out a little bit would be beneficial. Continuing on. Wasn't wearing nothing but a mini skirt and a blouse, not counting panties and bra, that is. It was a human night. And that bonfire wasn't helping nobody. All that heat makes a person thirsty, and there wasn't no water anywhere in that mob. Walking over the ground, I felt sharp twigs crack under my bare feet, and the careless bodies bumping into my elbows every couple of seconds. That's a good phrase. I danced a little, if you could call it that. If you ask me, shambling around in the woods in the middle of the night ain't exactly ballet. It wasn't long before I wanted to head home. I didn't know why I came. I guess I was expected to. I'm the class beauty of Roland High School. I know it. I'm not bragging or nothing, just a fact. But all that partying and drinking and all that racket, not my thing, plain and simple. I'm not pure or nothing, just a decent Christian girl. So again, the first paragraph was very clearly placed. We're getting a good sense of how our speaker speaks, but in the second paragraph, we're getting a sense of our speaker herself. We're getting an idea that she's using this phrase, wasn't wearing anything but a mini skirt and a blouse, not counting panties and bra, that is. That's kind of an airheaded thing to say, and that's the personality I'm getting off of this, is that she's a little bit spaced out and doesn't necessarily always know what's going on. And I've already read the story. This is my second time reading it. That turns out to be true. She's a little bit of an airhead, doesn't necessarily know what's going on, not very assertive. So we're getting some good characterization right off the bat. She's also kind of caught between worlds. She knows that she's beautiful, but doesn't want to brag about it. She's not braggadocious about it. Doesn't want to go to partying and drinking, but does it anyway. Not pure enough and just a Christian girl. So she's like, I'm not a slut, but I'm not pure either. She's trying to navigate her identity insecurity is something that's really coming off of this girl as well. I'm really getting a good sense of her, and I'm really enjoying this so far. Again, really good job on setting this scene. Continuing on. As I was thinking of heading home, I caught the eye of Bobby Walton. He's a star player on the Rollin' Rangers. I had heard the rumors. I knew what he was planning on doing. I was nervous, but I didn't stop him as he was making his way over to me, holding a hip flask in his right hand. Before saying anything, he offered me a swig. Normally I'd refuse, but seeing as how I bothered showing up at the party anyhow, and since it was grad night, I decided to be just a bit more daring. Stuff tasted nasty. I felt like someone punched the bottom of my brain. So that's a wonderful phrasing. Punch the bottom of my brain. Stuff tasted nasty. I guess I'm inferring that she doesn't know what it was, that it just tasted nasty, that she hasn't, that she's 17, 18, hasn't developed a taste for alcohol. Probably terrible alcohol anyway. It's a high school party, I'm assuming. Yeah, high school, okay. So Bobby Walton, star basketball player. Not said yet, but he's a basketball player. I heard the rumors. I knew what he was planning on doing. That's a little bit ambiguous, and that's, I'm assuming, on purpose. So what we're supposed to infer is something sexual, of course, and because we know what kind of story this is, just by virtue of it's impossible to not know that you're reading a creepypasta now, we're also kind of playing guessing games on, is this actually going to be sexual, or is that ambiguous phrasing for the purpose of leading us in one direction and something else is going to happen? That's a good place to get the mind going and thinking. So that's beneficial. Improper ellipses. I'm a stickler for this. I'm not a stickler on much grammar stuff, because this is all about the spoken word. That's what creepypasta is. Even when it's written down, a lot of the times it's written in a very personable way, but you still need to get those ellipses right and get those ellipses on point. I don't like those being improper. Continuing on. Big night, he said, already slurring. I guess so, I said with a shrug. I could go on about the boring, useless small talk that went on for too long, but honestly I can't remember half of it. Mostly just talking about how we were finally graduating and all that hoo-ha. Complaining about teachers whose names we'd probably forget. I think I remember him drawing on about his basketball scholarship, but like I said, all that sort of stuff's mostly lost on me. I make it sound boring, and most of it was. And on its own, it was. But my heart was pounding fierce beneath my breast. Each pause in the conversation made me wonder, is he going to ask now? All the while, he kept offering me sips from that flask, each offer just being a little bit easier to accept than the last. So he's trying to ply her with alcohol, our narrator with alcohol, and she's just going into it. She's not putting up a fight about it. She's just accepting, like, well, I might as well drink more, and she's really bad at saying no, and that's wonderful that we're getting to know this about her. She's an airhead, and she's bad at saying no. She's really setting the stage. She's not stupid, she's an airhead, and those are different things. She's saying things like complaining about teachers whose names we probably forget. She really doesn't have any interest in the small talk, and that tension between her not caring about this conversation, but her caring about the ulterior motives and being asked presumably to have sex or to go somewhere private. That's very interesting and very believable. Also, we heard about these rumors and stuff. What are these rumors? That he's going to ask her out? That he's going to have sex? Like, it's ambiguous. We know the direction, the general idea, but that also could be something where it's misleading on purpose, and that's interesting. I think that maybe instead of saying pounded mighty fierce beneath my breast, I think it would be better if it was singular. Maybe that's just me, pounded mighty fierce beneath my breast. Yeah, it's hard to say that, but maybe not plural. Maybe I'm talking out my ass and I have no idea what I'm talking about, and I do that quite a bit, but I'm just throwing that out there. He never said a word, just grabbed my hand and started leading me away from the bonfire. away from the crowd, past the trees and down a small ditch. When the party was nothing more than a quiet rumble from far away, he put his hand on my cheek and stroked it firmly. I felt a tingle shoot through my spine, but I did nothing, said nothing, just let him do what he was going to do. I figure that, since he was an expert here, I ought to trust him to lead. So Bobby's a bit of a man whore. He knows what he's doing. She's clearly enjoying this experience, but is saying, I'm just going to let him do what he's going to do. That's really good for building this tension of like she doesn't have any ability to say no, or she doesn't want to say no. We're building up this ambiguity that she doesn't have a spine, and we even use the phrase spine here. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch to bring these two things together, but I think whether you Parsicor intended this or not, that's there. The mention of spine and her being spineless in this situation, just like, I'm just going to let him do whatever he wants to do. It's really interesting that she's trying to play off that she's not an actor in this situation, and that develops really interesting later on. For if anyone else is hearing this, I know I'm kind of spoiling a few things, but we're going to continue on. Oh, and great scene setting, by the way. The rumble of the trees, blah, blah, blah. Poetic, but not in a way that is unrealistic. It is still firmly in the world of prose, and in the way that someone would speak. That is, until he wrapped his arms around me. Without even thinking, I shuddered and drew back. Seeing the confused look on his face, I told him I was feeling hot. He smiled and grabbed me by the hand and said, well then, let's go for a swim, little girl. Once again, he grabbed my hand without another word, and led me further down the ditch to the edge of the river. He stripped down nude and plunged right into the river. After dipping his shoulders under, he stood up. The waves lapped around his knees. Come on in, sweetheart, he ordered. The water's fine. So, he's using phrases that are kind of getting us to resent him, saying things like little girl. You don't want to, there's no place in the world where you want to call a person that you're trying to seduce little girl. And we're getting that, she's resisting in the situation where she does it, but she does it without thinking. It is just a natural response. And when he's kind of questioning her about it, she says, I was just feeling hot, which is trying to play off and acting like there's not an issue there, or like she doesn't have apprehensions about this. So she's trying to, every step of the way, deny that she has her apprehensions. And that's building this tension. It's doing a wonderful job of building that tension. Continuing on. Unsure of what to do, I took off my blouse and my skirt, but I kept my panties and bra. I stepped carefully into the water, instantly feeling how cold it was. I guess I wasn't going fast enough for Bobby Walton. Still smiling like a charmer, he reached out and pulled me further in by the wrist. Tripping over something in the water, I fell in face first, the cold taking my breath away. I, just now reading this for the second time, I read this about 2 hours ago. Now I'm reading this and recording this. I am getting some fridge whore here. Spoiler, there's some fridge whore here, and if you can figure it out beforehand, then you're psychic. So I did not notice that before, so that's wonderful. So, kind of jumping ahead and not saying what the ending is, but there are kind of two endings. The last two paragraphs are kind of each a different aspect to the ending, a different kind of punch. There's a punch here, too, with this fridge whore, and that's a nice little detail. We're getting that she's trying so hard to wake up and say no to something, but she's not quite able to do it. Bra and panties, kept the bra and panties on. Going back just a little bit, maybe it's realistic, maybe it's not. I would think that she would mention something about how he looks naked there. We'll get a little bit more about his body later, but I would expect a little bit more there. And I don't think that that's just my tendencies towards the sexual. I think that there would be something of that nature there. I'm assuming he's naked, because it says that he's stripped down and everything. But continuing on, When I pulled my hair out from over my face, I saw nothing but the light of the full moon glaring on the surface of the water. I looked up at the moon, only to see him blocked out by the shape of Bobby Walton, standing over me. He offered his hand to help me up. I accepted, and he hauled me to my feet. Beautiful language there, believable and beautiful and setting a mood. Before I could even say thanks, he leaned in and planted his lips on mine. His hands pulled me closer and started caressing me something splendid. I liked this. I liked it when his lips pressed against me again and again. So I returned the favor and even felt a flutter in my heart as his tongue snuck into my mouth. His grip grew firmer. He pushed against me harder the longer we kissed. I could feel myself swinging to and fro as he started swaying. All the muscles that propelled the Rangers to the state championship were in full force. I felt helpless, like a leaf caught in a big storm. His fingers began twiddling on the straps of my bra. I wanted him to slow down, but we were still kissing. I thought it might be rude to break it off now, even as he began ripping off my bra and throwing it into the river. When his fingers reached my panties, that's when I knew it needed to stop. I tried to pull away from him, but those lips refused to let go, and that grip only grew stronger. I tried resisting even more, thrusting my hips back away from him, but all he did was grab my behind with those muscular hands and hold me steady. So just slowing down a little bit, because I read through a lot of that there, that's really setting a very gradual mood where it is, I want this, there's a little bit too much, a little too quick, and then getting to a firm no, an unabashed, undubious no. So before, a lot of this was dubious consent kind of thing going on, to use the fan fiction phrasing. She's not wanting it to go so fast, has her apprehensions and everything, but isn't necessarily saying no. We get a firm, we're getting a firm no now. Oh, did we get a firm no yet? No, we're about to get a firm no. But she's drawing the line in the sand, saying that the panties are where it stops, we're done. She even let him rip off her bra, and so she's not, she's getting swept up in emotions and feelings and her own arousal or whatever, and she's not willing to tell him that she has boundaries just yet. Then she hits that point where she finds her boundaries and says, nope, that's wonderful. We get a lot of tension here. We're even though we're kind of like having Bobby say things like little girl and stuff, the way that he's like related to the moon and the surface of the water, it's all very romantic and building him up, and then we get that firm no. So back to the point. Please, I whispered in between the kiss. It should be kisses, right? In between the kisses. But that didn't stop him. That did nothing to stop him. I felt my panties slip down my thighs as something hard and warm pressed against me. I struggled even more to try and break it off, but I felt helpless as that leaf caught in the storm, and there was no way of fighting it. So I relaxed and hoped that it would be over quickly. So that is a very horrifying phrase. This idea that it should be over quickly. That is like the resignation of, I am about to be raped. That is very grave. That is very horrifying to hear. And it's a very realistic phrase that you hear when you hear accounts of rape victims. That's what you hear them say. I hope that this will be over quickly, is their thoughts that they're having. And the wonderful use of the phrase, leaf in a storm, multiple times. That is wonderful. And we're going to hear it again. And that is a brilliant way of describing this. She's caught up in this whirlwind of emotions, and it's really romantic, and she's drunk, and she wants it until she doesn't. And the whole time she has these apprehensions. And so we're building up to this, and it's wonderful. And it's very gradually written, because the first time I read this, it was written in such a paced way where even though we have these apprehensions, it doesn't feel like a rape scenario is about to play out. And when it eventually does, when you eventually get to the line, I knew there was no way to fight it, so I relaxed and hoped that it would be over quickly. That's when it hits you that, oh shit, this is a no bones about it rape scenario. That is horrifying. And it's horrifying because it built up to it so gradually. Continuing on, I felt something coarse brush up against my right leg, as if something just ran sandpaper over my calf. Just a moment later, I was released from the hold of the storm, falling back into the water. My mind was still dazed from the liquor, and I couldn't make anything out as I saw dark shapes splashing in front of me. I tried my hardest to get to my feet. I think that's what it's supposed to be. There's a typo there. Only to collapse back to my knees. The water around me grew warmer every time I did. I was finally able to crawl along the mud to dry land, where I fell on my back and blacked out. So the stress of it all, getting her to black out, that's interesting. Again, the storm metaphor, wonderful. And we get the idea that Bobby Walton is the storm in this scenario. Wonderful. But I'm going to continue on. There are 2 last paragraphs, and I think I'm going to power through them to hopefully keep some of the mood in here, and then give my last thoughts. They didn't find me till sunrise the next day, with bruises all over my naked body and a red scrape over my right leg. Teresa and Meg gave me a towel to wrap myself in and drove me back to my house. My parents weren't too pleased that their only daughter had come home a naked wreck just after graduation, but there weren't much that they could do to punish me anymore. It wasn't until a few days later that I learned that Bobby Walton had gone missing after seeing his yearbook photo on the local news. I felt like the whole town was in a panic. Search parties went out every day for a week. Nobody thought to ask me. Can only figure that nobody noticed the 2 of us go off on our own together. I didn't tell no one about what had happened in the river. How could I? I barely even knew what to make of it myself, and not just because of the booze. 3 weeks later, still no sign of Bobby Walton. Nowadays there aren't so many searches as there were before, but as I was looking online 2 nights back, I saw a link on Facebook to a story from Little Rock. Apparently, just that day, a pair of fishermen caught a bull shark that had swum into the Arkansas River. According to some shark expert, she was a mama heading south, having given birth just a few weeks back, further upriver. So we kind of get two punches here. So of course there's the shark at the end. There's the very end where we're getting baby shark, or the mother itself was the savior in this situation. That is why the story is called My Savior. And the shark is probably what she tripped over that made her land into the water. And that's the fridge whore that I just picked up on the second time reading this. So that's a wonderful little twist. I always like when you can have a monster without having a monster, and you can have a monster that's a good guy, because in this case, the monster was a good guy. We also have this bit about, where were we? This bit about her not knowing how to feel, and not just because of the booze. Theoretically, you obviously need to explain something about the monster, but theoretically, the story could end on that even. It shouldn't, because the ending is great and everything, but you could theoretically end on that. That's a strong enough way to end the story, where she doesn't know what to make of this situation because of the booze, because she liked Bobby Walton and she was about to be raped by Bobby Walton. Those are very conflicting emotions. We get this idea that rumors were floating around earlier, and I know what Bobby Walton's going to do. She feels a threat from Bobby Walton, but still goes along with it. It makes me wonder if something about the rumor mill and what was hearing and these rumors and everything would lead her to believe that he was going to attempt to rape her. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but maybe it's one of those like sixth sense kind of things where your other 5 senses kind of have these bits of information that you can't exactly place together. And so maybe she knew something was going to go awry and just didn't have the spine or the wherewithal, or just against her better judgments, went with Bobby Walton to that lake, to that river alone. we're getting that she has these conflicting emotions and everything, and that's wonderful. Conflicting emotions is a perfectly strong way to end a creepypasta. A monster is also a good way, provided that the monster is an interesting one, as it is here. I do have questions about how she got picked up. It's in the age of cell phones. It's 2009. I'm assuming she has a cell phone. But where are her clothes? Because she took off her clothes. Her panties might have gone missing in the water. Her bra was ripped off and thrown in the water. Those can be missing, but where are her clothes? And I'm assuming if she has her clothes or her purse, then that's where she got the cell phone to call Teresa and Meg to come pick her up. Or maybe Teresa and Meg were still passed out over at the bonfire. That needs to be explained a little bit. The phrase, I don't know why, but this phrase that they weren't too pleased that their only daughter had come home naked. Only daughter is kind of a big thing in a more country town. Again, great sense of place, wonderful ending, very unsettling in how it builds to, no, this is a rape scenario. There's no bones about it. There's this sense that she feels almost, maybe this is just me, but it almost seems like she almost feels sad for Bobby being killed, even though she was about to be raped by him. She obviously, presuming that she's the one who titled the story, and maybe that's a bit much to presume, she obviously very much so is happy that she wasn't raped. I love what I'm saying here. This idea that this is a savior is wonderful. That's an ambiguous, interesting title that wraps up the story quite nicely. Wonderful character exploration in the story, and you don't always get a lot of character exploration in Creepypasta. This is a wonderful story with a little bit of editing, and I do mean just a little bit, explaining a little detail here and there. This is an excellent story that deals with a very serious issue in a very interesting way. It's very compelling. I love this story. And I'm not just saying that because it was written by one of my subscriber commenter people. That said, if you have a story that you would like to be critiqued privately or not privately, I will be doing that, and I will be honest. You can just send those to me at deadendpalette@gmail.com.